guys, what's up? My name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel Reading with Remy. Today I'm doing my stats video for the midpoint of the year, and I also wanted to introduce you guys to Gus, who is not very happy right now, but this is my shelter kitty I just adopted. And he's everything, but I'm gonna let him go so he's not annoyed anymore. I woke him up from a nap, so he's not super pleased at the moment. So I'm just gonna go through some of my stats for the year. I have a handy dandy book tracker. I don't remember where we got this, but we did get it from somebody on BookTube, so if I can figure that out before this video goes up, I will link it down below so you guys can check it out. It's really awesome. I've really enjoyed using it. This is my first year using this and it's been super helpful and just really insightful. So I'm just gonna start with my overall, like, how much I've read. And so my page total for the year so far is 7,889, which is not a lot, but my hours listened to audio is 215 and like 0.59, so like 215 and a half hours roughly of audiobooks alone, which is crazy if you think about it. So the majority of my reading this year has been on audio, and so far I've acquired 29 books, which that can't be right. I probably have not updated that correctly, but I would scale maybe like 10 more on that, let's be real. But I have read 48 books, well, more like 44. I have books that I am currently reading that I'm over halfway or I like am for sure gonna finish. I have 4 on here currently that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna finish. So technically I've read 44 this year. Hopefully by the time this video goes up it'll be like 45 because I'm really close on a couple. We'll see. I'm not gonna give you my monthly breakdown because it's not really that important. But my best reading months so far have been March and April with 9 books each. Again, only read 12 books last year, so trying to put it in perspective, I'm doing really great. As far as formats, like I said earlier, audio is my winner right now. Actually, no, it's not. But what is would explain why my page count is very low. So audio, I've read 13. I have 2 that I did audio / physical, which means I read roughly half and half. Usually audio is a little bit heavier on this, but pretty close to half and half. And then ebook I have read 1, which is sad. Manga I have read 1. I've read 6 graphic novels, 10 physical books, and then my big winner is poetry, which is 15. And generally those are only about 100, 150 pages. Sometimes you get like a bigger one that's like 200, 250, but that's probably why my page count is so low. Series don't really matter. Main thing is I've read over half standalone, but barely, like 52%, and the rest have been like starting a series, continuing a series, and then I've only finished 5 series this year, which actually, I'm notorious for starting and never finishing, so I'm pretty proud of that. I'm actually really excited about that, so yay me, finished 5 series, and we're only halfway through the year. That's pretty great. For read from Amazon, and then Scribd, which all of my poetry books this year, except for maybe 2, have come from Scribd, so that's why so many are from Scribd. If there's something that I own on my shelves, I put them as something else, even if I read them on Scribd. But if I don't own them and I read them on Scribd, then they go in the Scribd category, obviously. Another thing that I've just started tracking like a week ago is representation. So I went back through everything that I've read this year and kind of put it into categories, if I could remember. And what I mean by representation, it could be anything like diversity, like racial diversity, mental health, LGBTQ, IA+, I always get that wrong, I get tongue-tied very easily. Disability, and then I also have a category for multiple, and then obviously none. 54% of the books that I've read this year have been none. I'd like to see that drop pretty significantly. I'd like for it to like hang out underneath 50. I focus on backlist books this year, and I feel like a lot of the older books didn't have as much diversity or representation as newer books do, so that's probably why this is lower. 27% of what I read has LGBTQIA+ elements, so that's good. Sadly, that the other ones aren't even close, so I need to work on that. And the next thing would be the intended audience. Again, this is skewed because of poetry books. So I consider most poetry books to be adult or, like, on rare cases, new adult. This part, I put those as adult, unless it's very obvious that it's young adult. So I have 17 adult books, which makes up 35% roughly, like 35.4 if you're being technical, of what I've read this year. The big one, no surprise here, is YA, which has been 52.1% of what I've read this year. I'm totally okay with that. I'm fine with that. What I would like to see is my adult outside of poetry go up a little bit. Like, that would be great. I think I've read maybe like 3 books outside of poetry that have been adult, so I'd like to work on that. I also really need to get moving on some middle grade because I've currently only read 2. And I have like a whole series of Rick Riordan that I've owned for several years now that I have not touched. And I love Rick Riordan, so there's no excuse. So if nothing else, I would like to add the 4 books in that series that I have not read to my middle grade counter. Next, I'm going to talk about author identity. So I have 5 categories for this: male, female, co-authored, anthology, and non-binary. And then I have unknown, predominantly female, which I feel like is the majority of YA is female writers, so that makes sense. So 60.4% of what I read this year has been female. Definitely want to try to read more male authored. Again, if I finally read the Rick Riordan books, that would help significantly. I've only read 33.3% male, and then like a measly 6.3% was co-author. I also track author nationality, which there's honestly too much to go into, but 64.4% of what I've read has been US authors. So I don't really care how I do it, but I'd like to see that go down a little bit. I feel like it's hard, especially like on BookTube, to find authors that aren't American, because I feel like that's just what everybody gets like arcs of, or like a lot of the big authors that everyone is always hyping, they're usually American, which I don't know. I just feel like I need to figure out a way to make that change a little bit. Something I did want to point out, because I mentioned it earlier, is my backlisted versus new release. I'm really trying hard not to just read the books that we buy when they come out. I've been doing actually really well. I have read 39 of the books that I have read have been backlisted and only 9 have been new release, so I'm pretty happy with that. That actually makes me very excited. As genres go, 39.6 of what I've read has been contemporary, which makes sense honestly, because I read so much poetry. However, I really need to get to some fantasy. Most of our shelves, I feel like, actually are fantasy, so that's kind of sad that this is so high. I need to get off of Scribd and stop reading poetry and start reading things I owned. That would be great. The highest that I read is urban fantasy with 14.6, so it's like very drastic difference. Romance, again, poetry books are why I have so much romance, because I'm really not a romance reader. If there's a romance like in the novel, cool, great, wonderful. But it's not why I pick up a book. Like, it's just not. I don't really have any other ones that are like big enough to talk about. Sci-fi fantasy, 6.3%. Historical fantasy, 6.3%. Historical fantasy, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you now, is 100% because I've been reading The Infernal Devices. That's all there is to it. Publishers go, 20.8% of what I've read has been Simon & Schuster, which I feel like is kind of not a bad thing because there are so many publishing houses within Simon & Schuster. So when you think about it, it's really not that bad. And then Andrews McMeel, which is a very popular poetry publishing house. So that one's on here pretty large. Penguin Random House, like, because they're Penguin Random House, is 12.5%. And then the only other one that is like big enough to even mention is Scholastic Press, which is 8.3, and that's literally just because the Raven Cycle. I read all 4 books this year. No, I only read 3 this year. Sorry, I read 3 of them this year, and they're all Scholastic Press, so I know that's a big part. I really want to read some more Macmillan. Disney Hyperion should go up when I finally read Rick Riordan. That is a goal for the end of the year, is to at least read the next one in the Trials of Apollo series. I definitely want to like try and not read anything Simon & Schuster for a little bit, just to like make this graph balance out a little bit. Because there's something so satisfying about having a nice and like balanced out graph, or just having like more pretty colors in the pinwheel, I don't know. So I really need to like read some other publishers that I haven't read yet that are on this. Last thing I want to talk about is my star ratings. I am notoriously bad about throwing 5 stars out at just like anything that I thought was good. So I really had to like go back through honestly, even yesterday I went back through and did this and just kind of like tweaked some ratings after I've thought about these books a little bit more. So before I did this, I'm pretty sure I had like 14 5 stars. I now only have 9, which is a little more realistic. I have 9 4.5 stars. My highest one is 4 stars, which is 12. And then I have 3 3.5 stars, 7 3 stars, 2 2.5 stars, no 2 stars, no 1.5 stars, and 1 1 star, and 1 DNF. I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, that means that I've had a fairly good reading year. I haven't really hated anything I've liked except for 2 poetry books that were just not my thing, which I talked about in my mid-year book freakout tag. If you are interested in those poetry books, I'll leave that link down below so you can check out which ones I'm talking about, but they just weren't impressive. But other than that, I've had a pretty good reading year. Can't complain. I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the year. My current Goodreads goal is only 50 books, and if I read everything that I have put on this tracker, I will only be 2 books shy of that. So that's pretty awesome. That's it for my reading stats. I don't know if any of y'all were interested in this. I just thought it'd be fun to film, and it was kind of cool to reflect on myself, so I really enjoyed it. Have any suggestions for books with male authors or with authors who aren't American? Leave them in the comments. I'd love to know. I'm trying to find more non-American, not female authors to read from. So yeah, that would be super helpful. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe for more awesome content. I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye!